This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. If you asked the average person who was the greatest musical prodigy of all time, they would most likely say Mozart. But if you dig deeper, you could make a mighty strong case that Felix Mendelssohn was the more amazing talent. He was not the child celebrity that Mozart was, so his talent did not develop in public. But the best known of Mendelssohn's early works, his Octet for Strings, written when he was 16, and his Overture to A Midsummer Night's Dream from his 17th year, were far more mature and less derivative than anything Mozart was writing at the same age. Mendelssohn found his own voice much earlier and used it with the confidence of a seasoned professional. And young Felix Mendelssohn was not just a musical prodigy. He studied literature and philosophy, became an accomplished artist, spoke several languages, both living and dead, and could hold his own in intellectual discussions with some of the greatest minds of his day. It was said of the Mendelssohn house that Europe came to their living room, and young Felix even formed a quite close friendship with the great writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who might have been the first to suggest that the boy's talent was even more miraculous than Mozart's. Felix and his siblings were also studying music with some of the finest teachers of the day, and when he began composing, Felix's parents would hire an orchestra for their living room as well, to play his pieces for their large circle of influential friends. By the time he turned 21 in 1830, he was not only world famous for his own compositions, but also for his rediscovery of the compositions of the then almost forgotten Johann Sebastian Bach. In Mendelssohn's day, everyone who had any aspirations to be a great artist took a trip to Italy, which was seen as the birthplace of all European culture. Mendelssohn took his trip in 1830 and 31 and was inspired to begin writing what he would refer to, even then, as his Italian Symphony. The impetus to finish it came the next year, when the London Philharmonic Society passed a resolution, quote, that Mr. Mendelssohn be requested to compose a symphony, an overture, and a vocal piece for the society, for which he be offered the sum of 100 guineas, end quote. The public success of this new symphony was immense, but for some reason, and we really don't know why, Mendelssohn himself was never satisfied with it. He revised it after that first performance, but then withdrew it from circulation, refusing to permit any more performances or publication during his lifetime. While he was writing his Symphony No. 4, Mendelssohn wrote to his sister Fanny that it would be the jolliest piece I have ever done, and it certainly starts out that way. This part of the piece would achieve even greater fame when it was used as the soundtrack for the climactic bicycle race in the 1979 film Breaking Away. One beautiful melody follows another until the clarinet casts a slightly darker shadow over the landscape with an elongated minor mode version of the opening theme. In the development section, Mendelssohn gets to show off how much he learned from his study of Bach with an ever-expanding fugue. But every so often that opening melody tries to return, until the whole orchestra finally relents and joins in for the recapitulation, which brings back all of the major melodies. The Andante slow movement is an almost religious processional, possibly a souvenir of one of the ceremonies that captured Mendelssohn's imagination on his Italian journey. It's a sound that would show up again 40 years later in Giuseppe Verdi's Requiem. Were they inspired by the same source, or was Verdi, the native Italian, inspired by Mendelssohn the visitor? For contrast, the clarinets bring in an easy-going tune in a major mode. Fragments of the opening theme return as if carried by the wind, and the procession gently moves off into the distance. By this point in the history of the symphony, the minuet of Haydn's and Mozart's time had been replaced in most cases by a scherzo, or joke. But Mendelssohn brings back the minuet, or at least a romantic version of that elegant, courtly classical dance. The finale is a rarity, a minor mode ending to a major key symphony. And yes, this is the music that you hear when the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man are trying to rescue Dorothy from the castle of the Wicked Witch. The movement is a combination of two traditional Italian dances, a saltarello, which is literally a leaping dance, and a tarantella. According to legend, the only cure for the bite of a tarantula was to keep the victim in perpetual motion. The poor tarantula has gotten a bad rap over the years. Its bite, though painful, is actually harmless. Even so, fiddlers would walk through the fields of Italy at harvest time, hoping for therapeutic engagements. And who would deny a musician the opportunity for gainful and reasonably honest employment? Certainly not Felix Mendelssohn. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.